Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Samia. Thank you, Irina. And thanks everybody for joining me 7 p.m. on a Thursday evening to listen a bit. So as Irina mentioned, I was at Pivotal for a number of years, and they created Spring, but they also did, we built CloudFoundry, which is a platform as a service product that many large organizations use as a platform to help deploy applications. And now I'm at a startup with a lot of folks who also used to be at Pivotal and ThoughtWorks, and we're building some more platform tools. So I want to talk a little bit about how I understand platform engineering and platform teams. I thought the best way to start, rather than jumping right into details, is a little bit of a story. So I think I'll start from the question of when for platform engineering, then we can talk about the who, the what, the why, and the how. I'm not going to have any slides. I apologize for that. But hopefully telling a story might be an okay replacement. But if you have any questions, please feel free to interrupt me. If I've said anything crazy and you want to tell me I'm wrong, also feel free to interrupt me. Please just don't worry at all. Or you can drop questions in chat. I'm not very good at paying attention to chat, but I will try to keep an eye. And at the end, I would love any questions. And I'm always trying to learn what platform looks like at different organizations. So if you are at a platform, in a platform engineering team now, I'd love to hear a little bit about your day-to-day, because I'll talk about one perspective, but there are many, many different ways that this role sort of manifests. So I'm going to start with a story because I think one of the crucial things about platform engineering and platform teams is a question of when, because I think that platform engineering is an engineering discipline that happens or that exists at a company as it evolves, and it really generally comes about because of need from growth. So it should be part of a conscious change to move a business or an organization forward. So I'm going to start with a story about a company from its beginnings, well before it even had a tech team, because I think that there are parallels with how a general company grows and how a tech team might grow to include platform. So let's imagine that we are talking today about a shoe company. And this shoe company has been around for a century. And it's a shoe company that started 1920s with the ambition of opening a store that offered the best shoes for healthcare professionals. And so this company started with a single shop in London, near Marylebone, near medical practices and hospitals, just trying to see if people would be interested in buying some really great shoes for doctors and nurses who are on their feet all day. And so it opened its shop and it got some customers. And slowly over time, those customers came back, and slowly over time, those customers told their friends, and folks came in from other parts of the UK, and the business grew, which was great. And what that growth meant was that this business decided, I think it's time to expand. I think we should see what it's like if we open a couple more shops, see if it's as popular in other places in the UK. So it opens up a few more shops over the next few decades. It opens up a few more shops in different parts in the UK. The economy is strengthening. The shops do well. Customers come back. Customers spread the word. And after a couple of decades, it realizes the economy strengthened, and it looks around, it's traveling, and in Europe, it can see those shoes that it sells only in the UK are in hospitals all over Europe. And so the company decides to make a step change, which is like a significant shift to move things forward. And in this case, the first step change is going from sort of small scale UK market with a handful of shops, and increasing the number of markets that customers could find those shoes. They wanted more happy customers. So the first step change was, let's go to more countries. And so during the 60s and 70s, it expanded. It expanded into many countries in Europe, and it had to go from sort of small scale operations, store by store, figuring out how it works, to how do we really industrialize, if that's what you want to call it, scale, if that's what you want to call it. How do we scale the growth of our shops? How do we make it easier to open more shops in more places so that we have more happy customers? So in that case, it needed to figure out how to take the expertise it needed and bring it in-house, how to build out teams that were focused on like the legal requirements, resource management, training, staff, hiring, commercial real estate, contracts. Again, scaling, whatever you'd like to call it. That's what they start to tackle in this step change. And the organization looks quite different to when it was just a group of shops in the UK. So for a couple of decades, it's focused on opening more brick and mortar shops in different countries, steady growth, all good news. And as it grows and as sort of the world grows, it notices that there's a new step change it can take, because it looks around and sees that many retail operations are starting to sell things not only in shops, but also in catalogs. So I don't know how many of you have ever bought anything from a catalog, but in the 70s and 80s, it looked around and it said, you know what, I think we could reach even more people, because with catalogs, we can send our product, we can send these great shoes to anyone at any address in these countries. Let's give this a try. So like many other companies, it changed as an organization, pushed itself forward so that it could go from not only supporting opening new brick and mortar shops, but also producing and publishing catalogs, and then dealing with the nuanced inventory that comes with having both store requirements and mail order requirements, thinking about more logistics, more transportation. How do we really make the process as smooth as possible so that when a customer places an order from a random location, they can get that order as quickly as possible, and they get exactly the thing that they're expecting, no more, no less. So again, the organization looked quite different as it started to grow its capabilities and publish catalogs, but that was a good thing, because lo and behold, people in all parts of these countries wanted to get those great shoes so that they wouldn't feel so tired at the end of their day, at the end of their long shift. So over the 70s and 80s, they continue to figure out new ways to innovate on their catalogs. They figure out how to tighten up their logistics. They improve their process. They see where things can get better. They also have to open things like customer service, customer support, all these functions that never existed before, but they figure it out as an organization to move the business forward. The next sort of big step change comes, actually, the next thing that happens isn't, in my mind, a step change, but you go in the catalogs are still quite popular, 70s, 80s, 90s, and in the 90s, something interesting happens, and that's the invention of the World Wide Web and the internet, and the growth of the internet, all of those things. And so now you have this company that's really quite strong with retail shops, and it's quite strong with its catalog, and everybody's talking about websites. So it looks at shops, looks around and says, maybe we need one of those. So it already has a marketing team because of all the work it already does. And so somebody in the marketing team is like, I have a cousin that's, put web pages online. We could try that. So at that point, the business looks around and says, okay, well, it seems like, yeah, let's just take whatever we put in the phone book and let's make a web page for that. And so the business, as a first step in this weird internet world, decided we're going to we'll publish our site, we'll put up our hours and our locations for all of the countries, and we'll put up our customer support number and make it easy for people to download the mail order form. Job done. Let's focus. Let's get back to the retail shops. And so the website was there, kind of sat, kept an eye on it. But of course, we all know that sort of online retail changed pretty quickly from the 90s and into the 2000s. So this company, like many others, looked and was like, we're missing a trick here, actually. In addition to selling by catalog, we should actually take our business online. They recognized that doing that step change and opening essentially an additional storefront would allow more customers in more places be able to see the product, figure out why it's so great, and get it delivered to their door. So then in the 2000s, they take that step change. And again, like the previous ones, they as a business had to figure out, well, what does this look like for us? Because this person in our marketing department that publishes changes to the web page every 2 weeks isn't going to cut it. They're not going to be able to get us an e-commerce site for people to buy our shoes. So what do we need to do? So in addition to all of the logistics and the inventory and the marketing, all of these functions, which were already part of the business, they had to, for the first time, think about what does a technical organization for our business look like to be able to create that online presence. So as I saw on my teams at this time, and as you'll see in many organizations, initially that first online site, similar to brick and mortar, was limited to just the UK. Let's build a storefront for our UK customers to be able to put in their UK addresses, pay with their UK cards, and get the shoes they want. And what that meant in terms of a team was, let's create a new team and bring in some designers to like draw the pictures, create some images, and then they'll pass it off to some developers. And those developers will write the code to make things click and make sure we show all the stuff. And then we have this operations team, which will, figure out the local and the remote databases and servers and stuff so that like the customers can actually see the site. It lives somewhere. And that worked. That worked for a UK site, and they launched and customers came, and then more customers came, and they as you would expect, realized that healthcare professionals liked to take the time to buy online over almost anything else. They didn't have enough time in their day to go out shopping, which was great. So they got this signal, and after a couple of years, similar to the brick and mortar, they said, well, all right, now where do we go from here? Online is clearly not going away. This is not an experiment that has flopped. We should do more here. So it looked around, and the first logical thing you can probably guess is, well, let's sell in more places. So like our European retail market, brick and mortar, let's open up to new locations for our online shop. Also, similar to brick and mortar versus catalog, why don't we, in addition to desktop, why don't we do that mobile commerce thing that's now even getting more and more popular? What would it look like for us to launch a mobile app for people to be able to buy those shoes? So again, this was a step change because the team that they had in place was able to support a UK shop with fairly straightforward functionality. But this increased sort of ambition meant that they needed different expertise and they needed more of it. So the next step change came with that decision to try one new country, and to try one new mobile platform. So you have this initial launch with just the UK stores, which is supporting one language, English, one set of address validation rules for the UK, one payment processing, one set of like customer data in one geography. And now they needed to, the minute they decide to do a new country, everything becomes more complex. Additionally, mobile platforms, as many of you are probably aware, come with a whole set of requirements in terms of how you build those applications, how you get them out in the wild, how you review them, how you test them, etc. So with both of those sort of coming up at the same time, which was the case for many businesses, the organization had to change, had to shift. So within the tech organization, which at that point was really these siloed roles of design, making some pictures, handing it over to developers to figure out how to make the pictures click and clack and make sure that the order goes through, and operations, making sure that those sites were up and running, you now have this need to evolve. And so as you started to see in many organizations, we'll call it agile, call it lean, whatever, you start to create more smaller focused teams where instead of those siloed roles, you have product teams. So you start to talk about product, not just tech, and you have multidisciplinary roles there, product owners thinking about what is the thing that we want to build on our online storefront to delight our customers in Germany, or how do we want to make our mobile storefront different to our online storefront to make people want to go to both. You have designers and UX folks who are thinking about what that experience is end to end, and working with developers and testers who are making sure that once you've figured out what you want the experience to be, you figure out how to build it. Another interesting element to these multidisciplinary sort of balanced teams is that you start to have engineers coming in more and more who are full stack engineers or DevOps engineers. So these engineers, unlike the engineers in sort of that first iteration of the tech org, were more broadly focused. So these engineers could come into this multidisciplinary team and say, okay, we want to get our mobile storefront up V1. Well, as an engineer, I know what we need is to be able to publish in the App Store, to be able to create test environments, to be able to run tests over and over, but also to be able to support languages, locales, currencies, different types of addresses, different regions for sensitive user data. And how do we wire all this stuff up? So you now have all these self-contained teams that are able to say, I know what the requirements are to make the mobile app. I'm focused on getting those users in Germany or in the UK on that mobile app with the best experience possible. All the stuff I need to do to accomplish that, I kind of get that too. So I can help with the automation. I can help us create our environments. I can help us get up and running. And you have a lot of teams doing that work of how do you build the screens, but also how do you build all the services and all the processes that make those screens functional. The next step change is really where platform engineering platform engineering teams start to become something that organizations want to think about. So you have the first mobile storefront released in the wild for the UK. Started with iOS UK only. Success. That team with DevOps-minded engineers collaborating across the board were able to get everything they need to go from pre-production, hello world, day one, all the way to in the App Store released, happy days. They work with operations, they work across the business. It's great. Similarly with Germany versus the UK, the first time that releases with the functionality that the UK store has, that team says, don't worry, we'll sort it out. We'll figure out how to make a website in test, dev, and prod, figure out the services we'll need. Hey, that other team build a useful service. Let's figure out how we connect, working all this out together, collaborating, which is fantastic. It means that you've tested that growth strategy. So now this company has the ability to see that their mobile storefront, as they guessed and hoped, was popular and customers were coming to it. They were downloading it. They were happy with the experience. They also see that, like in the UK, German healthcare professionals want their shoes and want to order them online and be able to get them as and when they want. And that was great. Platform engineering starts to develop because as soon as you've got V1 of your mobile app, or you have Germany, you're then looking at many more features and many more releases, more mobile platforms, more countries to keep up with, more load, more customer use. And for each of those things, as you have these multidisciplinary product teams, you're going to have new groups spinning up, coming together to focus on getting that to work. So Spain team, or the Android team, or opening up iOS to other countries. So you're able to continually deliver the value and keep those customers happy, keep the business happy. But after a few months, you've got DevOps engineers coming in, these full stack engineers saying, okay, well, that worked all right, but for this new feature, let's say we've got in our mobile app, we want more people coming. So we're going to release what we call a customization engine. We're going to let mobile users design their shoes with whatever color they want. We'll let them put a bit of text on as well, which is a great idea and incredibly delightful for customers. And the business was crazy about it. But to be able to get this at this point, whilst also supporting multiple platforms and multiple locations, this team was like, well, we need a different kind of database, and we need to be able to do a different rendering service. So we'll need X, Y, and Z. But the operations team and other engineering teams were quite busy. One of these engineers from a previous role was like, well, let's just use the cloud. And so at this point, the cloud was, AWS was around, GCP was coming, but this was the first time this business looks around and says, what's the cloud? How does that work? And you have an engineer who's come in to say, actually, if we use the cloud, if you let us set up an AWS account, it helps us provision things and get off the ground much quicker. I've done it before. I was able to get an app out in a day. You'll never believe it. If you let us, we can take care of it. Just let us know. So like many organizations, this business said, okay, that sounds really good. We like the idea of getting this customization engine out because we've heard other shoe companies are doing it, and we want to get it out as quickly as possible, which is great. So the operations team signs up for the AWS account and turns the keys over to that team. They've done it before. They're able to manage the full stack of concerns that they have. And so that team's like, perfect. All right, let's go. Let's request our instances. Here, all you have to do is just copy paste this stuff, plug it all together, and then you've got your customization engine backed by the database in the cloud. So for the first time, the organization has a cloud service that's part of what they use to get customer value out the door, which is fantastic. And it works. And they're able to get the feature out the door quickly, get started on the feature, get it tested, and get it out the door quickly, which of course catches the attention of other teams, because by this point, more new countries, more new features are coming up. So you have other teams also thinking, how can we get our feature out sooner? We have the feedback that our customers really want this, whether it's, better validation on checkout, or better images, better shaped images. It runs the gamut. But these teams hear, because you're doing more collaboration, they hear, oh, they're using the cloud. Wait, we have AWS now. I've used AWS. Let me see if we can get an account. So now you have another team saying, don't worry, I know how to do this. Getting access, going in, pulling the services they need, plugging it together, making sure it all tests well, getting that pipeline up and running, getting that feature out the door, which is great. And all of this means you're continuing to, this business really, the scales have tipped. Online and mobile sales are definitely more compelling than even retail at this point. So it's great that you have so many teams able to push so much value and get those customers as excited as they are. But after 12, 18 months, what happens is you have many teams all working independently to get the value out, and they're getting their features out. But what you're now seeing is it takes more time to actually make those changes. It takes more time for new teams to spin up, because for each team, all the concerns that you're figuring out, you're having to start from zero. So you start a new team for Spain, and once again, that team, maybe they have one person from the Germany team, maybe they have one person from the UK team, maybe they're all new because of the growth. But that team then needs to start from zero to figure out, how do I, in pre-production, how do I even just get started on building this experience? Where do I begin? And so that team on its own starts to realize, well, okay, I need to have environments. I need to be able to test. Okay, and development. Okay, we'll automate that. Well, how do I promote my code so that when I push it, it goes straight into those environments and runs my tests? Okay, we can figure that out. Okay, and then, oh, I think there are these services floating around that we can use for internationalization. Let's figure out which teams. So you end up having that cross collaboration, but actually it's quite high cost because it's almost word of mouth, team to team, person to person going through. And this is where platform engineering can really shine. So unlike your application teams, which are focused on what can we do to build things that will delight our users and increase the number of customers we have and make them happier, platform teams evolve when the organization is at a point where there's a lot of repeated manual labor happening across different teams. So similar to when the shoe store went from the UK to the EU, and they said, all right, we're going from a few shops to a bunch of countries with shops in each one. We need to figure out how to industrialize or how to scale. This is a similar situation where you've gone from a few application teams getting that initial release out, getting that initial new country out, to, oh, we have many, many, many things existing, all sort of doing the same toil, is what is how we generally call it. So platform engineering teams are focused on how to enable those application teams by deduplicating effort. They become a central point for the tech organization and the business to benefit from shared knowledge. And what that means is they start to look at all the accounts that exist in those clouds and say, we don't need this many accounts. For a new team that's spun up, the first valuable thing a platform engineering team can do is say, here, you're going to build an application. We know that to build it, you're going to need to start with a pre-production environment. We know that all of our teams require X, Y, and Z for pre-production environments. So we're going to create that for you. We're going to automate that for you. Sometimes that looks like Helm charts or Terraform or step-by-step technical guides to get people up and running. Other times that might look like an API. But the platform team essentially creates that platform of shared capabilities so that those application teams, whether they're starting from zero or whether they're building additional features, when they have something new that they need, that's a non-functional requirement, a service that they need, they can go to one place in the tech organization to get help. And sometimes that help means make an automated API request to us and we'll give you what you need. Other times, come to us and ask the question. We're looking at all the teams so we can help you understand what best practice is. And sometimes it's, here are some examples, take this away and see how that works. The other side of it is, the reality is online businesses are more complex than retail businesses in some respects. And we all know this, right? Technology changes quickly. And because this business has decided to go to the cloud, which is great, and to create essentially microservices and lots of small teams creating lots of small services, that means they can move quickly. But a lot of what you call day two concerns become over time, become more important. And having one central place to think about things like, are we sure that all of our databases have the right security configuration, have the right failover capabilities, have the right, do we have high confidence in the certificates that the organization is using? All of that becomes a shared concern rather than every team having to think about it. Additionally, billing. So application teams are focused on getting the features out there to delight customers. Speaking from experience from application teams, I'll say that that means things like making sure environments get destroyed correctly and that instances get spun down and that the right boxes are ticked for compliance take a little bit of a back burner. And that's okay, because when you have a platform engineering org, you can have that team consult with and have an eye in the organization on where application teams are, where they need support, and how they need to change and adapt to make sure that they're going to scale okay, and also that the business is going to be able to benefit from sort of the scaled services. So platform engineering teams can look very different depending on what organization you're working in. But I think through my work building out platform team tooling, I've seen that the teams that provide the most value to organizations are ones that recognize that as a platform team, my core responsibility is to allow those application teams, the product teams, to continue to deliver quickly and to continue to focus on how to delight customers, how to get more customers, how to make more available to customers in different places. And platform engineering teams are saying, how can we enable you? How can we make sure you have access to the services that you need? How can we help you make sure you have the guardrails you need so that you don't have to think too much about all of the non-functional requirements or operational concerns that can take a lot of headspace. And so the business evolves from having sort of a simple tech team with your siloed roles of design, developer, operations, into a world where you have more product-focused, product-first teams with product owners, UX, design, engineering, but a lot of times full stack, testing, all working together to focus on single features to deliver value. And then the last piece is as you scale, and especially as you start to adopt cloud, and as is inevitable in early days, maybe multiple clouds, many accounts, many services, you then realize that that platform function is to come in and say, how can we make sense of what's happening in the organization so that we can help our application teams be smarter about getting everything they need to get their value out the door. And so without my slides and with my story. I think that's the big takeaway that I think of with platform teams. And now I want to, as I said, turn it over to you all to share any stories you have of platform teams or ask me questions, because I do have lots of experience looking at different teams and formations and what they do.
Thank you for this great presentation. Actually, I have a good question. What is the KPI for the quarter? Example of the KPI for platform team.
Yeah, so key progress indicator. So when you're thinking, every organization is gonna, I guess, measure success differently, but platform teams, similar to application teams, have customers. It's just in this case, your customers need to be those internal application teams. And so many times KPIs are around how did you delight your application teams so that they can delight customers. So KPIs around time to provision instances, or reduction of toil time, or the number of a reduction in the number of instances, requests you get from one-off instances because everybody's using a consolidated account. So figuring out your KPIs around enabling teams to do things faster or smarter or without intervention tend to be like the signs of delight for the organization, if that makes sense.
Yeah, that makes sense. But now then, another question. What is the difference between backend platform engineer and site reliability engineer?
That's a great question. And also, I think a similar question comes up, which is, what's the difference between a platform team and an SR team or a cloud team? There's not much, and it comes down to the organization. So sometimes you have platform engineers that are focused on the consolidating the way that you provide services. And then you have SREs that are focused on specific services. Generally, though, those names are all just different flavors of the same thing. If at the end of the day, the job is to make sure that the non-functional requirements are available and can be scaled quickly so that application teams are enabled to help customers as fast as they can, then you've got what I see as a platform engineer. So I don't mind what you call it, but generally that's the goal. If the impact of your role is that you've helped an application team or a set of application teams work smarter to deliver their value to customers, then it's the same role.
Yeah, it makes sense. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
I have a question, Winna. So essentially, what would you say, because you mentioned that whoever like helps the application and team functions properly could be termed as a platform engineer. So where would you think like the DevOps team and the DevOps engineer fall into here? Like, is there some kind of link between platform engineering and DevOps engineering that we can think of or relate to here?
That's a great question. And I think, again, it comes down to organization. So I tend to think of platforms and DevOps engineers as having some shared responsibilities. So again, they're looking at how do applications get into customers' hands? How do those teams get things into customers' hands? DevOps engineers that are embedded in an application team might be helping take the platform services and helping run the application itself, right? So rather than thinking of everything from zero, operationally, they are helping get that specific application out to customers. But I think many times DevOps teams or DevOps engineers and platform engineers, similar to SREs, if what their goal is to deal with or concern themselves with, be strategic about non-functional requirements, how to set up services, how to ensure safety, those sorts of things, then it's the same role.
Right. Okay. All right. So essentially things like scalability, like scaling the application and all of that would fall under the platform and DevOps engineering, like some kind of shared responsibility there.
I think, yes, exactly. So like scaling options in an organization, how do application teams, what are the options application teams have around scaling? That set of options is something that like a platform team would concern itself with. How are the different ways that we enable application teams to scale? But then each application team is going to say, for my application in my context or for my project or my feature, whatever, which of the options that my platform team provides is the best scaling option. So it's really like, how do you create that platform of options? And then as application teams, they know where to come to figure out their options. They don't have to think about of all the ways to scale in the whole wide world, what will I do? Instead, they say, let me go to the experts who are thinking about this holistically. What are the ways we scale in this organization? Okay, I'll pick that one out of the 4, and then I'm going quickly. If that makes sense.
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Winna.
Do we have any more questions here? Okay, I have another question. What the size of engineering team in the company should be when you finally can say, okay, now I need a platform engineering team?
Well, that is a great question, and it would be wonderful if there were a set number that we could just know for sure. Unfortunately, there is not usually. So similar to the way the business has to respond to other parts of the organization. So when do we need, I don't know, more legal specialities? When do we need more marketing functions? It's similar in tech. Like, when do you need platform? Kind of depends on when do you have a level of complexity across the teams where you're going to save the business time, money, that you're going to ensure things are more safe, and you've got enough application teams that are going to benefit from having sort of a single entity think holistically across the board. What are the best practices? Because you certainly don't need an application team. If you have a single application team, you don't also need a platform team, because they both be figuring everything out from zero. But as you have more application teams and you start to notice that application teams are duplicating the effort, or application teams are neglecting some important day 2 concerns or safety concerns or security concerns, then you start to think about, should we spin out function to help those teams so that they can think more clearly about the thing that they're shipping? So I wouldn't say that for sure it needs to be once you've hit 3 teams or once you've hit 10 teams. It's much more about when you look around and you diagnose what's happening, do you see enough patterns of duplication or waste or risk that you want to corral the wagons and help the organization that way?
Yeah, that makes sense. I think it's more like not engineers, but how many apps and how many countries. Also,
yeah,
if we
exactly.
start from different countries, they need their own infrastructure, then it's definitely the time to start to build something around as a platform.
Yep.
I would like just to notice that if you go to build startup as a first ever engineer there, so you automatically becoming a platform engineer.
If you build the app, if they become a...
You're the first ever engineer in this company.
Yep.
I have a friend who is doing it.
Yeah. And that's a lot of that's
but in product at the same time.
Exactly, yes. So that's where you're not going to see a platform engineering organization in a startup usually. You might see it in a young company, but that company might be a scale up. If it's in hyperscale and you're trying to go to 5 markets simultaneously, even if the company is only a year old, you might strategically decide from early days, we're going to have a platform team so that we can figure out all the things these markets need and help them faster. Whereas with this shoe company that grew slower, there was less urgency. It could take time to go from sort of a simple development team into those product teams, which had full stack capabilities. And then you have more product teams. And so you need that sort of consolidated knowledge. But it comes down to like enablement and how quickly the product is growing to get customers and to make customers happy. And what benefit would you get from the consolidation?
Yes, thank you so much. Anyone else have any more questions? Cool, I think we can wrap up. I was worried that I will have a meeting, but it's cancelled. So yeah, I'm still here. And yeah, thank you so much.
Goodness. Well, I hope you get to go home soon, Irina. It's quite late.
No worries.
Thanks everybody for joining. I'll just drop, actually, if anybody does have any questions or any thoughts or feedback, I love feedback, please do find me on LinkedIn and send me a note. I'd love to hear from you. And thank you again for spending your Thursday evening with me.
Yes, and just 1 minute. We have recently launched the forum in our Slack for backend. And yes, people here, I think you're interested in backend. So please have a minute to fill the form I posted in the chat. And just let us know what topics you'd like to learn from Women Who Code, and we will prepare them for you. Yeah, so thank you so much for joining, and everyone have a nice evening.
Thank you. Thanks for hosting. Take care.
Thank you. Bye.
It's a great to start up